The morning grease on his hands had not yet dried when the flashing red and blue lights cut through the rain-soaked street, reflecting off the cracked windshield of a stalled patrol car and the tired eyes of a single father who had already given up on miracles. He was just a mechanic with a broken watch, a sleeping child at home, and a heart weighed down by years of quiet sacrifice. Yet that night he would make a choice that would pull two wounded lives into the same fragile orbit and change them forever. If you believe that kindness can return when you least expect it, if you believe people deserve second chances even when life has been unfair, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Ripple of Kindness. Because stories like this exist for those who still believe humanity can surprise us. He had not planned to stop that night. His garage lights were already off, his hands aching, his mind focused on the small apartment where his young son waited with a half-eaten dinner and a school project spread across the table. Being a single dad meant every minute mattered, every dollar counted, and every promise carried weight. Still, when he saw the patrol car stalled at the roadside, steam hissing from under the hood, something inside him slowed his steps. The woman standing beside it wore a uniform that looked heavier than fabric alone, her shoulders tense, her face tight with exhaustion. She was a cop, and the world often assumed that meant strength without cracks, but the rain revealed the truth in the slump of her posture and the way she rubbed her temples like someone carrying too much alone. He checked the engine with the practiced calm of a man who fixed broken things for a living. The problem was simple, the solution cheaper than the department tow would have charged, and despite knowing he would not be paid for the extra time, he worked anyway. His son had once asked him why he helped people who could not help him back, and he had answered without thinking that sometimes helping was the only way to stay human. By the time the engine roared back to life, the rain had softened into a mist, and the woman's eyes held something like relief mixed with disbelief. He waved it off, wiped his hands, and drove home, never imagining that small act would follow him into the next day. Life did not slow down for kindness. Morning came early with cereal bowls, mismatched socks, and a child's sleepy smile that made the exhaustion worth it. He dropped his son at school and headed to the garage, thinking only about invoices and overdue bills. When he returned home later, the door to his apartment was unlocked. Panic hit first, the sharp fear of a father whose world lived in one small body. He rushed inside, heart pounding, only to stop short in the doorway. The apartment smelled clean, like soap and something warm. Sunlight spilled across floors that were usually dulled by dust. The sink was empty, the counter wiped, toys neatly stacked where chaos usually lived. And there, moving carefully as if afraid to break the peace, was the same woman from the night before, no uniform now, just simple clothes, sleeves rolled up, hair pulled back, focused on restoring order to a space that rarely knew it. She looked up, startled, and in that moment the power balance shifted from badges and grease to something far more human, gratitude meeting disbelief. She had tracked him down through a receipt he had slipped under her wiper, not to repay money, but to return dignity. Her life, it turned out, had been unraveling quietly. Long shifts, a recent divorce, an empty house that echoed too loudly at night, and a job that showed her the worst of people while demanding she never show the cracks it left behind. When he helped her without question, it reminded her of a version of herself that once believed small goodness could still matter. Cleaning his home was not charity. It was her way of saying she saw him, the tired father, the man holding his life together with calloused hands and quiet resolve. Days passed, and kindness did not end with that morning. It grew carefully, like something fragile both were afraid to name. She stopped by the garage sometimes, not for favors, but with coffee and a listening ear. He learned about the nights she spent staring at her ceiling, replaying calls she wished had ended differently. She learned about his late wife, taken too soon, and the promise he made to keep their son's world steady no matter the cost. They did not rush, because both knew what rushing could destroy. Trouble came anyway, because life never allows peace to settle without testing it. A misunderstanding at work put his garage at risk. A complaint tied loosely to her badge and unfairly tightened by gossip. Old fears rose fast. The fear that kindness could become a liability, that helping the wrong person could cost him everything he had left. For her, the weight of responsibility pressed hard, the familiar ache of being judged before being understood. They stood on opposite sides of a line neither wanted to draw, both tempted to retreat into the safety of loneliness they already knew. What changed them was not a grand gesture, but the smallest truth spoken at the right moment. He remembered why he had stopped that night in the rain. She remembered why she had put on the uniform in the first place. When the dust settled, the garage stayed open, reputations mended, and trust, once cracked, was repaired with patience instead of pride. Their lives did not suddenly become easy, but they became shared, and that made all the difference. The boy noticed first. Children always do. He noticed laughter lasting longer, dinners stretching into stories, the quiet presence of someone who stayed even when things were hard. For the cop, the apartment no longer echoed the same way. For the mechanic, the world felt less heavy. Kindness had not erased their pain, but it had given it meaning. If this story reached something tender inside you, if it reminded you of a time when a small act changed your direction, please take a moment near the end of this video to like, comment, and share it with someone who needs hope today. Your engagement helps stories of compassion travel farther than despair ever could.